Hey everyone, welcome back to the Pathways to Happiness podcast. My name is Nena Lavonne. I am a life coach that specializes in life transformation and personal development. And today we're going to be talking all about feeling like your best days are behind you, that the future is going to be a downgrade, and just the overall feeling of hopelessness. This podcast is by request by multiple people, and I have a lot to say about this topic, but as always, I want to first thank you all for your tremendous support, both here and on the Nena Lavonne YouTube channel. I think we have really built a phenomenal community here, and it's wonderful seeing everyone interact and add their insight in the comments. So as always, I just wanted to express my gratitude and let you know how much you are truly appreciated. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into today's topic. So it was almost strange how many times I got versions of the same question over the last few weeks, which was basically, how do I stop feeling like my best days are behind me? Or how do you move forward when life just keeps getting worse? And there were just a lot of similar questions that really had a common thread that centered around that feeling of hopelessness. And this is something that so many people struggle with at least some point in their lives. And even if it's short-lived, it can just feel devastating. And right now, I feel like there is a huge wave of hopelessness that's going around because, let's face it, there is a lot of arguably negative news and a lot of unusual circumstances. And many, many people are being faced with huge changes in their lives and ones that they didn't ask for. And that can make it feel worse too, because when it's a change that we plan for, there is probably some optimism in it. There is a general sense that we are making this change purposefully to hopefully improve our life in some way. But when it's a surprise or a change that we are resistant to, it feels more like a loss. When we think about the idea or the statement, my best days are behind me, we can dissect it to see what the statement is really saying. Firstly, it's usually saying something positive about the past. It's saying that we feel there was something valuable there. So something that maybe if it gets lost, that it could never come back to us. So there's a feeling that something precious is there. And a lot of times we romanticize the past even more once we are in a new phase of life, especially if we have negative or even mixed feelings about it. So that job or that relationship, it all gets an automatic upgrade once we view it from the other side. Doesn't mean it's the reality of what the situation was, but if we view it that way, we have the attachment, the emotions that surround it as if it really had been that way. And then sometimes we really do have a good thing going. We really have something that is valuable, that does seem ideal. And then it changes. And of course, that can be extremely painful. And yes, that absolutely does happen as well. And it would be silly to think that we could just blink our eyes and be able to just fully cope with this immediately, or be able to cut our losses and just move on. We've got to process these emotions. We need to work through these hurts. That is definitely part of the process. But before we go any further, I want to give the spoiler alert that it is possible to overcome the feelings of hopelessness. It is possible to change the opinion or the thought that our best days are behind us, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. Because if we are feeling this way, it's a lot. It's a big thing. It's not something to brush underneath the rug. There is real pain that is attached to it. But I will make the case for hope still being there, and not just hope, something even bigger, a concept that we can take with us as our life continues to change course and go off the path that we initially designed. You know, about 10 or maybe even 15 years after I went to college, I ran into a friend that went to school with me. I absolutely loved college and I had an amazing time. And it's definitely something I look upon fondly when I think about, and I have incredible memories from that time period. But when I was talking to my friend, she said something that I will never forget. We were laughing about all these funny stories, and she told me that she always knew that life would go downhill after our graduation, that she knew that it was such a great time that nothing would ever compare to it. And she said that she was right. Nothing ever did come close to that. And although it was nice to see her and that we had a great time, I remember walking away feeling really sad. I was so sad that she felt that way. And since then, I have talked to dozens, if not more, people who say that they also know the best of their life is behind them. So this is not an uncommon thing. This is not an uncommon perception, especially if there was a lot of success or perceived happiness intertwined with that time period. We tend to get this feeling like that was the top, that was the best we could do, that we have this conviction that nothing would ever compare. And I think that has several consequences. The first is, of course, a lot of negative emotions and that feeling of hopelessness or helplessness. And the second is a feeling that we need to try to recreate that same experience somehow. So there is a desperation to try to replicate that career or that relationship or that experience. We want to relive it even if there is some kind of downgrade attached to it. We are so convinced that the experience was the best it could ever be that we can feel like any version of it is better than not having the experience anymore. And if we, for whatever reason, can't have any version of that experience again, we may feel like it's a huge blow to our identity, and not just our own personal identity in the sense that it's the way we view our own selves, but are feeling that it's a blow to our public identity. So, for example, maybe we were once happily married and that was a huge part of that public identity. So if we get divorced, we not only have the pain of that actual experience, but we have the perceived pain of facing the world as a single person. Or if we were, let's say, a pro athlete that didn't get their contract renewed, we could have this sense of embarrassment, feeling like our self-worth is really wrapped up in our career. So there's a lot of layers to this, and it doesn't have to be these big examples. A lot of people experience the fear that they will lose relevance in their social circle or within their familiar settings. And a lot of people are feeling right now like life as they know it is over, that the things that helped them maybe get through the day or the week, a lot of these things aren't available to them right now. Maybe they used to go to the gym or to dance classes or to a meetup group or had the habit of going to the movies twice a month or a sports event. And these things may seem like smaller things, and yes, maybe they are, but they can still add up to a feeling of loss. I hear a lot of people saying now that they would gladly take back all the things that they had been complaining about. For example, high school students that aren't able to go back to school right now, realizing that they actually enjoyed it even though they had been complaining about it. Just having general freedom or a set schedule that provided comfort. When we look at these things in retrospect, they can all seem really valuable. And that can cause a lot of pain and suffering because, again, there is a sense that these things are never going to go back to the way that they once were. And we're going to talk a lot more about that. But I wanted to validate those feelings for anyone experiencing this, because experiencing that type of mental suffering can be really difficult. And again, we are definitely going to talk about solutions. So don't worry, these feelings are not a prison sentence for a lifetime of wishing to be back at a different time. But it doesn't mean that the feelings themselves are not valid. All our feelings are valid. I know a lot of times we have guilt because of our feelings and our emotions, and I don't want you to feel that you need to have guilt, because you don't. These are real situations, and these situations do have consequences, but that doesn't mean that we can't change our mindset. And going back to consequences, the last consequence that I wanted to mention, although the list could arguably go on and on and on, is that the feeling of hopelessness really kills motivation. So think of a boxer. If he keeps getting knocked to the ground, it takes more and more strength to keep getting up. And after a while, mentally, he may feel like he can't even do it. And I think there is that aspect there for a lot of people too. You know, it's funny, I tell clients all the time that whatever you do, do not wake up and immediately check your phone. Do not go to a news app. Give yourself time to start the day, to set your intentions, to get your mindset where it needs to be. But for whatever reason yesterday, I did not take my own advice. And the first thing that I did in the morning was check out some news app. And I'm reading all these negative and horrific news stories. And it affected me big time. It made me feel like the world was just this horrible place, and one bad thing after another is happening. And a few hours later, I was still carrying that negativity with me, and I felt like I couldn't even get things done. I was totally bothered, and I just did not feel motivated at all. And then I realized what had happened, and it went to prove the fact that when we get flooded with negative emotions, no matter where they come from, it makes it very difficult to move forward. It just kills your drive, and it can kill the belief that what we create, what we can do, is going to make a difference. Like, no matter what, bad things are going to happen. And that is definitely another extremely dangerous aspect of hopelessness. A while back, I made a video about learned helplessness. So if you aren't familiar with this concept, I'm going to give you a little textbook definition, which is basically a condition in which a person suffers from a sense of powerlessness arising from a traumatic event or a persistent failure to succeed. It is thought to be one of the underlying causes of depression. So this is something that I have studied a lot because I think this theory holds a lot of water, and this is something that many of us experience when we are repeatedly put in situations in which we don't feel like we have any control. So what happens when learned helplessness is experienced, we will stop trying to change the outcome of a situation. Now, that is not to say that we should always try to change an outcome or that it's even possible. However, the experience of this learned helplessness can make us feel like we have control over nothing that we ever do could influence our lives or how we feel emotionally, which is certainly not true. And I wanted to bring this up because I think that this can certainly play a role in all of this. And if you're interested in learning more about this phenomenon or how to work through it, you can check out the learned helplessness video I made on the YouTube channel. And if you are listening to this podcast through YouTube, I will link it down below so you have that resource. You can also look up the psychologist Martin Seligman, who is just one of the most inspiring people ever in my eyes, but who has also done extensive research in this specific area and is considered to be the father of positive psychology, which is the branch of psychology that I am most personally drawn to. So, if all these feelings are valid, does that mean that we are stuck with them? What if we have truly come to the determination that the best days of our lives really are behind us and we are not excited to move forward into the future because it just seems like a downgrade or a disappointment. What if we truly feel like that? Well, I first want to say that you are not hopeless, that life isn't hopeless, and although we may have these feelings right now, that there is always hope and the best of our lives can always be in front of us. I know that may seem impossible or untrue right now, but again, I'm going to make the case for it, and I'm going to offer some actionable steps to help us get going in that direction. But before I do, I just want to mention that if the negative emotions that you are experiencing are all-consuming, or if you feel that you need additional support or assistance in this stage of your life, that getting help from a licensed mental health professional can be extremely helpful. So please know that this resource is out there. So I definitely wanted to mention that before we moved on. But if that is not the case for you personally, I wanted to go over some strategies that can help not only shift your mindset, but help you to get motivated again, and most importantly, to find hope again, because hope is a necessary ingredient to change. And when we feel like there is no hope, it's very difficult to be able to move forward. So the first thing I want to say is that change is not defeat. Change is not even a downgrade when we can see the benefit in it or the potential. We have just convinced ourselves, usually through our limiting beliefs, that the thing we had, that one thing, is the most important thing, that thing defines us or defines our happiness. But we have to consider the possibility that that is not the case. What situation out there accurately represents the best of something? Maybe something is great, but is it or was it the best? If we look at it objectively now, was that job or that relationship or whatever it was it perfect? Were there aspects of it you would have changed if you could? Of course there was. Of course, because nothing is perfect. No situation, no experience. So we have to be honest with ourselves about that. We can't continuously tell ourselves that it was the best that ever could have been, because if we think that way, then yes, any alternative seems worse. So my invitation to you, firstly, is to stop labeling things mentally. Stop ranking everything and start allowing yourself to have positive experiences through things that you have labeled as bad simply because they aren't the experiences that you labeled as best. I'm certainly not saying to deny it when a circumstance is truly bad or dangerous or something like that. That's not healthy either, but I am simply saying that we create self-fulfilling prophecies all the time. We don't give new experiences a chance. We don't allow the new experience to unfold because we are clinging so desperately to the old. But we have to do two things here. We have to admit and accept that the experience is over. So clinging to it is clearly not helpful. And second, we have to be open. We have to be open to the good of the experience. We can't just say, oh, well, we were once a pro athlete, so whatever it is that we're going to do now is going to be beneath us. That's crazy. We need to truly be open. We can't be defined by that one thing because there are so many other things out there. We need to also understand that we are truly looking for peace in our life. Sometimes we think it's happiness, and happiness is certainly important, but I think for most people what we are really looking for is that mental space where we can feel at peace, and it is definitely possible. It is always possible. So I really think we need to start with that openness. And when we can actually have openness, we can start to see that having a blank slate can actually be such a blessing, a chance to create a life that is even in stronger alignment with who we really are at this point in our life. Remember that experience that you are clinging to was created by a different version of yourself, and you have moving forward since then. You have evolved since then. And maybe you don't see that. Maybe you don't see the change because we, evolve every single day. We grow and we learn, but a lot of times we don't notice that. But a blank slate means that this time we are creating from a fresh new perspective, an updated version of ourselves. And I think the next step is to let ourselves imagine again, to let ourselves explore new options and new visions for the future. And once we do that, we can set goals for ourselves. And if we are in a situation that feels unchangeable, we always have the option of changing our objective, of changing the actual goal. And that can get us feeling excited again because we can have new successes, new chapters. And I know I say this a lot, but our story is not over yet. We have so many more chapters to go. And when we think about it, the opportunity to redefine ourselves in our lives is again really a blessing. And we can get filled with hope when we keep even small commitments to ourselves, if we can reach even the smallest of goals. So we can start there. We can set a tiny goal, a tiny new practice, and make that commitment to ourselves, keep that commitment. And when we reach that goal, it's just the fact that we're going to have that realization, that sense of empowerment that will remind us that we have power, that we have not lost control over our life. And yes, maybe the world is changing, but we are still in control of our thoughts, of our behavior, and of our perspective. So set up these little opportunities for these little victories. These give us the motivation and the confidence to start working towards new goals and new experiences. Another thing I think can be really helpful is to zoom out and think about the big picture. Remember what is really important to you. What are your whys? What are the things, the big things that you truly find valuable? Is it your family? Is it your sense of contribution? Is it your spirituality? If we focus on these big areas, we can start to realize that we still have purpose even when aspects of our life are changing. We are still valuable. We are still making a difference. We are still connected to these bigger concepts, to these bigger values. And another strategy to kind of combat the feeling of hopelessness is to make a list of our self-limiting beliefs that are holding us back. So maybe we feel that we can't move forward, or that we aren't able to create something new or something that's even better than what we had, because we are holding damaging beliefs about our own selves or about our own abilities that are keeping us in the mode of clinging because we feel like we can't do better, which is never, ever, ever true. So we can list out these beliefs and we can look at them, and then we can challenge them. And when we know what they are, we can start working on them. But too often, they go unnoticed and they go unchallenged. And when we feel we can't do better, that is always going to be the case. We forget our own value so often, and we forget that who we are has nothing to do with our circumstances. And we are who we are no matter what we do or no matter what we have. We are important. We are enough. No matter what is going on, no matter what we feel has been taken away, we are still worthy. It is not a judgment against us. We can't let this seep into our self-esteem and ruminate and think that if only we had done this or that or done something differently, we wouldn't be in this situation. Because firstly, it doesn't even matter if that is the case. We're here now, and we must trust that the universe knows what it's doing and that this is an essential part of our story. And blame is useless. The more time we dwell on these factors, the harder it becomes to move on. And if we don't mentally move on, we are not going to believe that good is going to come to us in the future. And there is good, and we deserve good because, again, circumstance is not a judgment of how good or bad we are. It's just a circumstance, and we can choose to view it in any way we want. And if we take the road less traveled by, which is seeing the positives and seeing the potential in new situations, we can have a whole new world open up to us, and one that could be way better than what we could have ever imagined or even designed or desired. And we need to know that is a possibility and that it is only unlikely if we refuse to consider it. Because remember, again, we are the authors of the story, and we need to stop making other characters or even the scenery more important. We are the focus here. We are the main story. At least we should be, and that's where our focus needs to be. We can't think about how other people are going to perceive us. We just need to focus on what lies directly ahead. And we don't have to keep writing sad stories. We are choosing to, though, if we refuse to let go and to believe in ourselves. And we have to take care of ourselves. We can't expect to feel hopeful when we are constantly blaming ourselves or beating ourselves up. We have to give ourselves a break. We need to practice self-care and do all the basics. We need to eat right. We need to sleep. We need to exercise. We need to get outside. We need to meditate. All these things that we always talk about, but very rarely put into practice. And we need to also learn to be present in this moment. Because remember, in this moment, there is no suffering. The suffering comes from thinking about the past or worrying about the future. And I think a huge aspect is that we need to dare to dream again. Our dreams are often indications of the gifts we have and the path that we should be embarking on. And I want you to know that you are never, ever hopeless, and that our best is never behind us unless we allow ourselves to believe that. And guess what? You have control over whether or not you choose to accept that. So if that's something that you have been accepting, if that is the story that you keep telling yourself over and over and over, you need to notice that story and you need to throw it out and put it in the trash can, because it is not serving you and it is simply not reality. You are, in fact, constantly feeding yourself a lie. And the problem with that is that our subconscious mind is always listening. And if we are telling ourselves always that the future is a downgrade, then it is certainly going to help us create that reality. So we must instead adopt a sense of optimism. Just like we can have learned helplessness, we can have learned optimism. It is a skill that we can practice and that we can master. We have to learn to transform our hopeless feelings into feelings of hope. Remember, these feelings and this situation is not permanent. This too shall pass. And if it feels like too much, if it feels too heavy to try to figure out the whole rest of your life right now, then don't do it. All you need to figure out at this moment is the rest of today. When it's too much, focus on this moment. Focus on what will give you hope at this hour, at this minute of your life. This is where you can start. And when we see ourselves surviving minutes and hours and days, we can start to shift that feeling of survival to a feeling of creating or even enjoying. Observe how you are talking to yourself and what you are telling yourself on a regular basis and start to switch the script. It is your life, so you get to write the script. We forget this. We let the rest of the world design our story and even our perspective, but this is our job. So start there and then start acknowledging the good moments. We get so busy, we get so caught up in our misery that we don't see them, but they never leave us. There's always good moments. They are there. We're just tuning them out right now. But start to notice them and then start to focus on them. And we can even from there start to create them. Remember, again, we're writing the story. So we can turn this around. Always. There's always hope. There is hope everywhere. So feel the feelings. Allow yourself to grieve this loss. Yes. But remember, this isn't where your story ends. This is where your story begins. So ask yourself, what do I want? What do I want to experience? And then what is one little thing that I could do to pull me closer to the experience that I do want? And from there, repeat over and over, one little thing at a time, one little moment at a time. And with each moment, we begin to heal. And so we are building new experiences, and at the same time, we're also being healed in the process because time is passing. And we begin to learn to be open to new experience as we see that experience that are new can and often do bring blessings. And more importantly, hope. Your life is meaningful always, and it's an adventure. So enjoy that adventure in the same way that you would enjoy a roller coaster. I know that sometimes we think that we really would like to have a flat roller coaster right now, but deep down we know that isn't true. We need to be brave enough to experience it all. And when we can do that, we can start to embrace the adventure. And trust me, this ride isn't over, and neither is your story. There are unimaginably wonderful things in your future. So get excited. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. But I truly hope today's podcast was a reminder that yes, good things are still yet to come. And in fact, good things are happening even in this moment when we're not ready to see them yet. So when we start to shift our mindset, we will start seeing these things more and more. They are there. So I want to thank you all so much for spending time with me today, and for all of you for asking this beautiful and important question that so many of us are really struggling with right now. So I truly hope that you have a renewed sense of optimism and hope. And I would love to know how you plan to move forward in your life. So don't hesitate to share it in the comments. I love reading them. I read all of them. And I look forward to talking to you all next time. Have a truly extraordinary day, everyone. Take care, guys.